Good afternoon, everybody. It's Carolyn Brown. Neshad's been kidnapped, apparently, and won't be back today. So I'm running this show solo. So welcome to Career Care Package. Today, I'm delighted to introduce Gauri, who was on last week. And Gauri and Neshad went through so many questions around what's happening in the recruitment world and what recruiters really think and how to get a job faster that we thought we'd bring Gauri back on. And today we're going to be asking her questions about interviews. Now, I put eye-popping interview tips, so things that you might do in an interview that make a recruiter like Gauri's eyes pop in a good way or maybe in a bad way. So if you've got questions, please put them in the comments and we'd be happy to answer them. And really do take this opportunity because, as Gauri and I were talking before we came online, Gauri is at the coalface. So she sees good, bad, she makes decisions, she talks to other recruiters, she's making hiring decisions. So you need to get through people like Gauri if you're actually going to get a job. So enough of me rambling. Welcome to the show, Gauri. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Carly. And thanks to Neshad as well, even though he's not here today. But thanks for calling me back and having me on your show. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I follow the show as well, so it's good to be added in this guest list.
Fantastic. All right. So I guess for people that didn't watch the show last week, Gauri, maybe just give people a brief history of your recruitment experience because you've been a recruiter for the past 10 years or so.
Yeah. So I have been in IT recruitment, especially from last 10 years. I used to work in India, so my education background is in IT itself. And while I was doing my masters, I happened to get a chance to go in the recruitment, and I kind of like that. So I worked in India for the agency as well as I was internal recruiter. And around 8 years back, I moved here in Australia. I struggled a bit initially, then I happened to get a role with an agency. So I was with the agency for around 5 years. So there I was I used to source profiles, screen them, then I handled a team. I had interacted with clients as well. So when I moved out, I was handling the clients, so account manager kind of role. And now I'm working with a service organization as an internal recruiter.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of people is my quick summary of that. So yeah, today we're talking about interviews. Hi, I just want to say hi to a few people. Hi, Imtiaz. Hi, Deepika. And we've actually got a question from Deepika, which we'll sneak in now because I think it's a good question to start off with because if you don't get through this, you don't actually get an interview. And she wants to know what recruiters really want to see on a resume. What are your thoughts on that?
So, first of all, whenever a resume comes for any role, right, it needs to be very simple and it needs to be clear. I mean, the recruiter needs to get that idea of what this person is doing. If you're a BA, if you're a developer, the tasks and the technologies that you have worked on so far and the projects that you have done, it needs to be put forward very clearly. So sometimes the resumes are very complicated and recruiters don't have much time to go through each and every profile, to be honest. So the message needs to be very clearly put on and it needs to be simple. So overall, at one glance, you need to know what this person is doing, and it needs to be exciting enough. So I'll just pick up the phone and give you a call, and I would want to understand a bit more about your profile.
So it's a sales document. It needs to be, people don't want to guess from your resume why you're applying for the role. It should be pretty obvious.
Yes. Yeah, because if you're looking for maybe a career change or if there are things that you want to explain, I suggest them to put that separately in a cover letter or just try to arrange a call with the recruiter and just have a conversation about the profile. But when you look at the resume at first, it needs to be bang on.
Yeah, exactly.
And what exactly the candidate is looking for as well. I mean, candidate needs to be clear on what the role he wants to work with, and the profile should be based on that.
Yeah, because I guess you just sort of summarizing what you said. the resume is the marketing document. The job of the resume is to get you the interview. It's not necessarily your entire career history from the time that you went back to primary school and that type of thing.
True.
So,
True.
yeah.
Too many personal details are not required. I mean, just like professional things, whatever will help you to get the role, that needs to be put on the profile.
Yeah. Which brings me on to a question about telephone screening. So, you've got somebody's resume and you can see, there's a reason that you're interviewing them and you can see what they've done. What are you actually looking for in that telephone screen?
Yeah, so that basic screening is very important. I mean, it's kind of make or break when you're working for an agency, right? You are dealing with many profiles. I mean, you're a high volume recruiter, and there are deadlines for each role. So it is not always possible to meet the candidate personally every time before sharing their profiles with the client. So coffee catch-ups are, of course, their favorites. But when you have to screen over the phone, um, during the 10-15 minutes, you just need to understand about that person, like as much as you can. So there are basic things that we usually check, like where the person is located, what are his location preferences, which visa he's on, and what sort of role he is looking for. But for me personally, I will let candidate talk more. I just want to understand how confident that person is, how comfortable he is while talking, how he explains about his profile. I am interested in knowing about his experience, like overall, how much experience he has got, and what are the different skills or technologies that he has worked on so far. And depending on the job description as well. So if I'm recruiting for any SAP role, maybe Fiori or ABAP, so I'll just check with that person, like how many SAP modules he has handled so far, or how many end-to-end implementations he has done. So how where he is able to explain. So not necessarily I'll have the technical background, but he should be able to explain, and I need to understand what he has done in the recent projects. So that's what I try to look for. And
So are you screening against the role that you have?
most
Perhaps.
of the times, yes. But for in recruitment, usually we get the heads up as well, depending on the client finds that mostly this client will have this kind of role. So there are sometimes calls that happen on the expression of interest basis. So
Yeah.
we have got the heads up that we'll get this role, maybe a .NET role or a Java role or something like that. So
Yeah.
just to be prepared, like when the if we have good candidates to share with the client, it's a good idea to just speak with them earlier and just get their details and everything. So that time it is very important, like how the candidate is treating the recruiter as well, because
Yeah.
some people are not interested in sharing the details if the role is not there. But I will always suggest people to talk to recruiter anyway, because that will be always beneficial for them. So not for one role, maybe, I mean, if that conversation is back of my mind, I'll just put that person's profile for some other role which may
Yeah.
come like within like couple of hours afterwards, after we have a call. So it's a good idea to always have a word with recruiter. And
Yeah.
there are people who always say that I'll just share my resume with you and just go through my CV. Everything is mentioned on the CV. There's no need to have this conversation. So
Ah.
that's
So they
a
don't see the
kind of,
point of the call. Gee,
yeah.
that's
So
really
if
interesting because I think that, I put in the headline eye-popping things. That's probably one of the eye-poppingly bad things that people can do, do you think?
definitely, I mean, if you're in a hurry and if you don't have time, just get a like comfortable slot. We can just always like have a mutual timeline, and I just ask them, like, if you're not comfortable right now, we can just have a call maybe at 5 o'clock or maybe tomorrow. But just give that 5 minutes dedicatedly to the recruiter to have that conversation. So that helps
Mm.
both way, and then it helps you to establish a good relationship with the recruiter as well, and that's never
Yeah.
a bad thing, right? It will always help you.
Well, I think in this day and age, if a recruiter's calling you, be happy because of the thousands of jobs that have been lost, that's gold. That's a golden opportunity. I used to find the thing that used to really annoy me when I recruited is that where, I put effort into the job description and the advertisement and put a line there that says, please answer this question and tell me why you want this job. And inevitably, 1 in 10 people would actually do that. And sometimes I'd ring people that didn't actually answer that question, and they wouldn't know that they'd forgotten that they'd applied. So, it's instantly on the back foot basically with me around that.
That
So,
is true.
yeah, okay. So we've got some questions. So Balin says, "Hi, Carolyn Brown. Nice to see you, Gauri. Nice to see you too, Balin. It's fantastic that you're here. Hi, Poonam. And a question from Balin, which is interesting actually. He says, some of the time the application is asking for your home address. Then you get rejected merely on the grounds that your house location is saying it's too far from your house. How much is too far? I didn't think that recruiters, that in a way is some form of discrimination and eliminates people from, the opportunity to have a discussion about their willingness to move. For example, if you're in different states, I tend to, when I work on people's resumes, if they're in, I don't tend to put location. I just put email and phone number, particularly if somebody's applying interstate and they intend moving into that city. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Gauri? What do you think? Do
Yeah,
you ever look and pre-screen somebody out based on the fact that they're too far away, or?
I check for states usually because
Yeah.
right now as well, even though the remote option is available because of this, like what is happening in Victoria, right? Sometimes even though a client prefers somebody, sometimes like that the people are there in the same state,
Mm,
just because like couple of times in a week if they have want to have a catch up or something. I mean, it depends on the client requirement
mm,
as well. But state wise, I do check out that like the
yeah.
person is in which state. But home address and all usually just doesn't matter. I mean, if not like because right now the flexibility is there usually for most of the organizations. So if you are willing to work from home and if required you are able to travel at least couple of days in a week, then it shouldn't matter. So based on the home address, usually the recruiter won't just rule out the profile. And it depends on the application tracking system as well. But they, I mean, just because you're staying too far is not the reason to rule out on any
Mm,
profile.
yeah. I know in some regional areas that they really like, if you're not in that area, if it's a regional town, they like it's a big move to move there. So often, they might ask you questions around what have you researched about the town? What do you know about us? Have you lived in a regional area before? Because their concern is that, you might get there and absolutely not like it. So sometimes you want to maybe think about addressing those sorts of things if it's a regional job, for example, I think. So, yeah, okay. Wanted to get to the topic of Zoom interviews. So I imagine that, I think pretty much everybody's been doing interviews over Zoom. Are people doing Zoom interviews any different from the sort of traditional face-to-face interview? Is there anything they're looking for in a Zoom interview that's different?
Not really. Zoom or Microsoft Teams as well. That's used very often these days. So the good thing about video interviews is clients are usually try to get all the hiring managers or all the people involved in the interview at once. So rather than having like multiple rounds of interview every time that used to happen earlier, this is
Yeah.
like the process is shorter these days. So that's a very good point. So everybody is there on one call and it just happens. Uh, Tips about the video interview is just basic. I mean, you have to just check the internet connection, and
Mm.
if you have to any like if there is any other method that the other client is using, if you have to like create an account or something, just be prepared earlier. Just don't do the last minute rush, because last minute panic always like backfires.
Mm.
And always have your phone with you, because if you're not able to reach out, or if something is not working out, you can just call a recruiter and let them know as well. There are
Mm.
basics of how to find a quiet spot and a bit of plain background. And always, even though we are working from home these days, everybody is giving interviews from home. Just during the interview, at least use the formals, like the dress code and all. You'll have to take care of the dress code. And there are a couple of big no-nos, like some people, if it is lunchtime, they prefer to have their lunch while giving the interview and all.
No.
So yeah, that's
Oh no, that's really bad. That's like,
yeah.
it's one
So,
of those things, like, I reckon that's a good thing to think about, because you've got to be present, right? People can tell when you're not present. And even sort of taking a swig of water or a swig of coffee, there's a real gift you give to people if the only thing that you're focused on in that interaction is understanding them and them understanding you. So to
true.
me, I think anything else, it's okay in a Zoom meeting, but anything else is distracting. So there's got to me, you're being judged by the top half of your body and your voice and your eye contact, and everything else is, it gets in the way. So to be quite mindful of that, because
Yeah.
um, that's what that might actually eliminate you. But Gauri, did you say that people are making up their minds faster now with Zoom
Yes.
interviews? Like, they're not doing 2 or 3 rounds; they're just going, okay, we
Yes.
do one interview, and we're going to make a decision.
Yeah, I mean, two, three people at once, they try to arrange their time, and the
Right.
call happens at once, and the decision is taken. So that is a good thing that has happened. And one
Yeah.
more thing I wanted to point out in this Zoom interview thing, uh, when you're giving interviews, you just tend to maybe open multiple tabs as well. And whatever you do on the computer, right, the slightest movement, it can be like heard, or like people can make out. So as you said, no need to be focused on the interview. That is really important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So to have tabs shut down and just be the
Yeah.
Zoom.
I mean, don't do anything else. If you're giving interviews, just be focused there over the interview.
It's funny on that note. I used to have a friend, and I have friends. It sounds terrible, but she always used to. Whenever I rang, she always used to type. I could always hear her typing, and in the end, I didn't call. I stopped calling her because I'm thinking, let's, conversation, listening skills here, basically. So
True.
yeah, but I guess with pop-ups and things like that, I know like we're doing LinkedIn Live, which is a version of, an interview. If something pops up on my screen, I instantly panic, thinking if I get rid of that, then I'm going to shut down the whole broadcast, and chaos is going to descend, basically. So yeah, okay. If you've got any questions, please keep them coming through, because we've got Gauri for at least another 20 minutes. I've got some questions here. I'll keep working through. Um, this is a big question, I think, and I don't think it's people can't, I don't think, give scientific answers to this question. But how do you determine cultural fit? Because we all talk about, you've got the skills fit, but we had Dawn Graham on the show this morning, and one of the things that she said in her TED talk was people want to work out whether they want to sit next to you for the next 2 years or whatever. So that's the thing about cultural fit, and your fit into the team, and your fit into the organisation. So how do you determine cultural fit? What are some of the things that you're looking at as an interviewer to make sure that person's good fit for cultural fit for the team?
Yeah, so cultural fit is kind of a tricky situation, kind of a gray area. So what happens is people will usually prefer to work with somebody who they know, right? So that's why this networking and reference, like providing references,
Yeah.
is important. Because if like you, for for example, if you tell me tomorrow, see, Gauri, I know this person and he is a Java developer and he's really good. So I will go on your words, like you have given the
Mm,
reference to me, and that always helps. So when you just don't know any candidate, like, and or candidate also doesn't have any connection with in regards to that team, it really depends on what exactly the client is looking for.
mm,
So we usually get the requirement about the project, and we have this conversation with the teams as well, like the technical teams, what exactly they are looking for. So if the project is at very critical stage and they are looking for somebody who can just join the team and just get the things done, like you can just start working. And if I am like interviewing couple of people, and if somebody says like I'll need some kind of guidance, or I need kind of a bit relaxed environment, a bit slow process, so that match will be a bad match, right? I mean, I can't put that person in a very fast paced project. So
mm,
depending on what client is asking for, and depending on how my conversation with the candidates go as well, we try
mm.
to match uh, for the particular role. So
Yeah,
it really for candidates as well, it is important to for them as well to know why they are looking to work in a particular organization, what
mm,
background check or what homework that they have done, have they spoken with anybody, because you can get connected through LinkedIn with like people work on particular organizations. You can just have a catch up just to understand how what sort of company that is, and
yeah,
what sort of role that you will be performing, and what are your expectations. And when we have this brief about the project, or when client tells us about the new role, we just try to match those. So cultural fit and the domain knowledge really comes up in this sense, like how urgent the role is, and
yeah.
how
So
critical. Yeah.
if it's a more urgent role and there's a project that's just got to, somebody in to help get it over the line, then the fit is more important then, or less important because you just want the
It is
skills there.
more important because, yeah, so we can like include this domain knowledge point as well in this, because it takes a bit of time for everyone to understand how the industry works. So if there is a banking project and it's really urgent and they really need somebody to understand a bit of concepts about banking and
Mm,
what's happening, so they will always prefer somebody who has got good experience working with various banks in Australia.
yeah,
So the local experience, industry experience, cultural fit, it's kind of on the same line when it comes to like how critical the project is and what
yeah,
client is looking for.
yeah. That's fair enough. It's funny. I used to, when I was recruiting, look at people just in general about how they interacted with me as a recruiter in terms of their engagement in the process. So, how prepared they were, how readily they answered questions, how easy it was to get them in for an interview. I always used to take those as guides around whether they actually wanted the job, and therefore, they're halfway to being a reasonable actual fit for the role. And then I guess when I was doing a lot of call center recruitment at one point, and it was almost like, could I see you every day on the phone, time and time? Like, could I actually picture you in that environment? Um, Working away at it, and it was just sort of that gut feel around whether I could sense that that was something that they wanted to do. But a lot of it was around, how engaged they were in the recruitment process and how keen they were to make themselves available and answer questions and that kind of thing as well. So, and I know
You
some
can,
people like assess or, ask the receptionist, for example, how they greeted the receptionist. Did they ignore them, or did they go and say hello and introduce themselves and that type of thing? So, yeah,
because you can put a lot of things in the resume, right? I mean, you can make a perfect resume, but
yeah,
it depends on how you conduct yourself and how you treat others. So that is like you have said it well, like, right? how you treat people, how you treat like people surrounding you. Even if like the interview is a bit late, like how patient you are, or you're like losing out on patience, and
Yeah.
how many times you have inquired, like those things, right? For some reason, if the interview has to reschedule, like nobody likes to do that, but for some reason, if it happens, how you react, and it depends on both. Like clients also need to maintain their reputation, and
Mm,
they need to do right part uh, on their own. But yeah, it depends on the candidate as well, how candidate is conducting himself.
mm. Okay, Bellin has a suggestion for Zoom interviews. Candidates should opt for a virtual background. Sorry, candidates shouldn't opt for a virtual background as the image keeps flickering and your own image keeps fading in and fading out, causing distraction for the interviewer. I tend to agree with that. I do like the odd virtual background, but I do find it
Yeah.
distracting because I'm trying to guess what's behind it. That's my thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you've got this great virtual background, but what's going on behind there? So it's like when you walk down the street in the city, in the inner city suburbs, and people have their doors open at night. You can't sort of, everybody's head peers around the corner. So, what are your thoughts on that?
That's true. I mean, it's good if you don't keep that virtual background and just try to choose maybe a plain wall or something, or
Yeah.
just not very chaotic like what's seen behind you, but just a plain thing. Because that otherwise, if it is very chaotic behind me, like it will distract you as well. The interviewers, just get distracted. So,
Yeah.
not choosing that virtual background is the good point, and yeah, the candidate needs to be prepared. So, and they just need to make that eye contact, or just maybe choose the right camera angle as well. Because if you keep looking here and there, and if you're just not into that interview, then like even though you know all the answers, or even though you're answering everything perfectly, it
Mm.
just doesn't matter. You need to conduct yourself well.
Yeah. So, Adavani says good morning, and a LinkedIn user says hello, everyone. I'm not sure who the LinkedIn user is because it's just come up like that, but hello, good to see you here. Okay, question around references. So, what are you looking for in a reference check? What are some of the questions that you might ask to a referee?
So, reference checks are as well very crucial. I mean, people sometimes don't give that much importance to
Mm,
reference checks, but it happens. Sometimes what happens is client may like multiple people, and the decision is made on how the reference check went for these candidates. So
mm,
when you're progressing in the interviews, just maybe after 2 rounds, it's always good to just get in touch with your referees and let them know that you're applying for which role, and to have a bit of conversation, and just to refresh the memory, like when they work together, what exactly they were doing, because you just tend to forget sometimes, and when we call the referees, it's just sometimes there are vague answers that they don't remember, or they are not
mm,
aware. And if you always need to like inform that person that you will receive a call for my reference
mm,
check. And usually it depends on the role, the questions, but the point that you asked about the cultural fit as well. So the reference checks helps a lot in that, to understand how the person is, how he conducts himself, how on time he's like, how often he has taken leaves, how
mm,
punctual that person is, how he conducts himself, how his relationship with his peers, and how are his stakeholder management skills and all. So depending on what role, what interview is, those questions change. But usually uh, we want to understand how punctual and how particular this candidate is, how
mm,
he likes to get managed as well. So it's
mm,
always a good idea to give the reference of your manager all the time, because manager usually knows you very well, like your working style, and like how do you like conduct yourself, how are your relationship with your peers, and also it's always a good idea to have a good relation with your manager and give them the idea that you are giving the interviews, and
Mm.
he'll get a call from the recruiter.
Yeah. What do you, if you get a bad, I mean, people don't tend to give bad references, but sometimes they say things that aren't what you're expecting, for example, or not compatible with the job. How many references do you do? What if you get a reference that's not so great of somebody? Is that the end of the story, or do you go back and talk to a few people and try and put the pieces together?
So usually, the standard process is to go do reference checks. But
Mm.
if the reference is bad, we will ask for more referees as well, because it happens. I mean, if somebody has like left the contract halfway through, or something has gone wrong, then there is a chance that people will have a bad impression. Not necessarily
Yeah.
that person is bad or it will impact the work, but they might not have that good relationship. And if you happen to give that person's details as reference, it just goes into the bad reference check. So if we sense that, we just try to do more digging. Like we try to check if we know people working in that area, or we know somebody through mutual connections, or also we do a proper reference check as well, like more. And if we find that there are like multiple people saying the same thing, then we don't go for that candidate,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So you might ask around rather than just relying on that reference. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that happens a lot. I think there's people do the informal call and go, "What's so and so really like?" So um, yeah, which is a big sign to I guess we say that we live in big cities in Melbourne and Sydney, but sectors aren't that big, and people tend to know people within sectors as well. So what's something really fantastic that you've seen somebody do in an interview that's absolutely won you over? What's an eye-poppingly good thing that people do in interviews?
Um, it depends. If so, one person I remember, so I had put him for like I had represented him for one of my clients, and he was selected for the second round of interview. So he took quite a good effort and made a little bit of presentation about how, like, what values he can bring to the organization, to the client side. So he did his homework, he did the research, he knew what role he's opting for, and he
Mm,
made a wonderful presentation. And client as well liked that. Like they
mm,
were really impressed. So that was a good thing. And it's always, I mean, if you are appearing for, maybe you have cleared the basic first round, and if you have like going for the second round, if you have done any other assignments, or is there anything else that you can show that will enhance your chances, then it's always a good idea to have a word with the recruiter and share the links. A couple of my other candidates as well, they had shared their different assignments, not related to the work, but different kind of projects that they have done and all.
mm,
So that always impresses, like, to the recruiter as well as the client. So everybody likes that this person has gone and put in some efforts, and he has done some research, and he has like created this presentation and all. So
yeah,
that's a really good thing. During the interview as well, you always need to ask questions to the interviewers as well. It shouldn't be just one way around. Uh, so, like, how creative you are and how keen you are to know about the project that you will be working for if you're
mm,
shortlisted. You need to be quite like interactive and engaging during the interview. So that impresses the interview panel always. And after the interview as well, it's always a good idea to just send a thank you note to the recruiter as well as
yeah,
to the technical panel, and just timely, like not immediately, maybe the next day, and depending on what timeline they have told you about the feedback, just keep doing the follow up as well. So that shows that you are really keen to
yeah.
go for this role. and
Yeah.
then you just happen to remember that person, right? So if not for that role, people will want to help you out. Like
Yeah.
the profile will be on back of your mind, and you just want to like somehow you just feel like helping that person and
Yeah.
like put you like I'll just recommend him to somebody else if he's not successful with my client.
Yeah.
So so how
So
much effort you take that
yeah.
also.
So it sounds like treating the interview in a way like a bit of a detective process, particularly if there's a couple of interviews that you're going for, and if you're finding out something in the first interview, bringing relevant examples into the second interview, and also from what you've just said, just the follow up, like,
True.
is really important. So the thank you and the thank you note and the attention to detail there. So
Yeah.
fantastic. If you've got any more questions for Gauri, please put them in. What about a question that had flagged here for you, Gauri, is around salary negotiations. If somebody hasn't brought up salary, and this happens quite a lot, it's not in the ad, the recruiter doesn't mention it, and you're sitting in the interview, when should you bring up salary? Like, when's a good time if it hasn't been mentioned at all?
So usually, if you are working with an agency recruiter, agency recruiters always get some kind of budget range from the client. So
Yeah.
usually, if you're going through an agency, they will usually check what are your expectations and if they are able to fit you within that range.
Mm.
Um, for the internal recruitment as well, where you have the HR interview round, usually that time the salary negotiation part comes up. So
Mm.
what I suggest is, even though the salary is not mentioned anywhere in the role, usually on Seek, or maybe on, you can do your research as well on Glassdoor. Like there are so many sites. You just try to find out about the company, just try to find the similar roles, and understand what range usually uh, that company, or usually for that role, what range of salary is usually provided. And
Mm.
you also need to know your worth as well. I mean, depending on how much experience you have got, and like there are so many factors that are involved in salary. So while negotiation, it's always a good idea to put a range, like always ask within the range that
Mm.
you will be comfortable to go for. So
Mm.
that always, so always, I mean, the research needs to be done from your end. Just
Mm.
don't go completely blank is what I tell my candidates. So sometimes while talking to recruiters as well, they'll just say that I have no idea. If somebody has recently moved, I mean, there are some things that we can understand, but
Mm.
from your end, if you're looking for a job, I believe that you need to do some kind of research as well, like what sort
Mm.
of contract rates are going on and what you can usually get, and then have a proper discussion with the recruiter.
Yeah, because if a recruiter's mentioning it, you don't want, they're not going to bring you in if your expectations are wildly out of whack with what the job is actually offering, because you don't want to have that conversation after you've done all that hard work to find somebody, basically. Yeah, fantastic. Well, Gauri, we don't have any more questions. So I might just end with what your biggest tips are to find a job during this time. What are some of the really good things that people are doing that might get your notice as a recruiter?
So it just really is important to like stand out amongst all the applications. So always try to have a good working relationship with a couple of recruiters. There are like recruiters who specialize in particular areas as well. So just find out your particular skills and which recruiters, because not everybody will come back and respond. I mean, depending on how busy they are, it's always a good idea to get connected with people, do proper networking as well. And during the pandemic situation, there are so many people who are like helping out. There are so many webinars going on. So there are ways to reach out and get connected to people. So networking for me is important. And if you're looking out for a role, you need to have your LinkedIn profile up to date as well. Just mention that you're looking for a role and all your details. So people will mention that they are actively looking out, but then they don't provide any contact number or they don't check their account very often as well. So if I'm like messaging somebody as well, and for a whole week, if I don't get any response, and when the role is closed, somehow they'll see the message and then they respond, then it just doesn't help. I mean, they miss out on a good opportunity as well. So it's always good to just put a particular like time for each day and just check all your emails and your LinkedIn messages as well. Put all the data properly. And on LinkedIn as well, it is good to mention. So most people will mention like Australia. So I prefer, like, already I prefer somebody putting the states as well. So that helps because it depends what client might be looking for, right? So that is important. Put your contact details properly. And uh, profile wise as well, try to like put details, because there are people who will just mention about their like company name designation, and there's nothing about like what exactly they do. So a little bit about your profile as well. If your LinkedIn profile is complete, right, properly updated, then it's really easy for recruiters as well to reach out. And if you have finished any role, so most people I've seen that in the resumes as well as on LinkedIn, they don't mention the end date. So if I have an urgent role, like really client needs somebody within like the profile within 2 days, and they will say that we will conduct the interview within this week, and the person needs to start from next Monday and all. And I might come across a good profile, but that person, he must have mentioned, like, for example, is working for a telco company. And so I might assume that he's a permanent employee there and he might not be interested for this kind of urgent role, right? And the fact might be that he will be looking out, he might be interested, he has just not updated his profile. So those small things, right, that those, you just miss out on those parts. Like if you have finished a role, there is nothing wrong in just mentioning that you have just finished the contract, whether the permanent role or contract. Just put that month and year on the LinkedIn and the resume, and just make sure that everything matches as well. So the LinkedIn profile is completely different and the resume that you send is different. Then also you just don't feel like comfortable to put forward
Yeah,
your profile. So
yeah,
that is important. So
yeah. That makes sense, especially like, we were talking this morning about networking and, connecting up with people that you used to know. And so having your profile with details that people can connect and relate to that are current is really important as well. So, because you never know who might be looking at your profile. So, Gauri, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. And we'll certainly get you back in on our recruiter sessions as we have them going forward. But thank you so much for sharing all of your insights and knowledge today.
thank you so much, Carla, and thank you to the people who joined as well.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll be back tomorrow. If you're watching this and you haven't followed the hashtag Career Care Package, please do on LinkedIn. You'll get notified of past shows and shows coming up. If you're watching this on YouTube and you enjoy what you've seen, please subscribe. We've got new videos daily, plus a whole host of backlog videos that I haven't uploaded onto YouTube yet. We'll see you all tomorrow, and I can't remember exactly what Naisha's sign-off is, but it's something about wearing a mask, staying inside, being safe, and the usual story, especially if you're in Melbourne. So until tomorrow, we'll see you then, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.